Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into something a little different but very real. As I begin renovating my basement, I want to share 4 paranormal encounters that still give me chills to this day. These are moments I can't explain, but I've never forgotten. Before we start, I want to say I'm not a paranormal expert. I'm simply sharing my own lived experiences. Growing up in a Mexican household, stories of spirits, shapeshifters, and witchcraft weren't just spooky bedtime tales. They were lessons, warnings, reminders that the spirit world walks with us. In my community, the supernatural isn't just folklore, it's reality. It's respected, feared, and deeply rooted in our connection to land, ancestry, and the unseen. This is part one of my basement renovation, and today I'll be cleaning out this space and airing out some paranormal trauma while I'm at it. So if you're ready to confront the unknown with me, grab a blanket, maybe some sage, and let's begin. So, my first encounter starts off when I was 6 years old. My aunt lived in a duplex. She rented out the top part to other family members, and she lived on the bottom part with her family. The layout of her home was unique. It was in shape of a U, so when you would walk in through the door, which was at the back of the house, you walked in to a hallway. In front of you was the basement door that led down. Um, to the right of you were the bedrooms, and to the left of you was the kitchen, and then the living room, but in shape of a U, the letter U, if that makes sense. Now, in this home, people often talked about seeing a child. No one ever encountered the child when others were around. It was always a one on one experience. So, this house had a very specific energy. And as a child myself, I could sense it. It felt as if someone were watching me constantly, and I could sense someone walking behind me. Now, that could have just been like me being a naive child. I always think about when I would go to turn off the light before bed and just running to my bed so no ghost would get me. But in that home, that energy felt very real. Now, one day, one of my aunt's friends came over, and while she was in the kitchen getting a drink, she noticed that there was a dark shadow of a little boy sitting under the table, and she called out to him, thinking it was one of the children. But the child didn't move, he just stared at her, and she could only see the shadow, and she felt very uneasy, so she bent down to get a better look of him. And suddenly her face turned pale and she began crying and screaming frantically because she had heard about everyone seeing the spirit of a child in the house. But when you actually encounter it, it's like a different feeling. So everyone in the house is gathered around her, trying to see what she had seen. Being the curious child that I was, I stepped forward right away. And they asked me, hey, go turn on the kitchen light, which was on the other side of the room, and I had to walk past the table to get to it. I couldn't see what she was seeing, so I was like, okay. So I walked over, turned on the light. We all looked under the table, and there was nothing there. She insisted that she had seen a little boy, and we believed her. We weren't sure what to do about it, though. A couple weeks go by, and we were having a get together at my aunt's house. My grandma came over, and as she was walking in through the door, the basement door was open. The lights were off, but the front of the door casted a light on the bottom of the basement stairs just because they were practically right in front of each other. And so, as my grandma was walking past, she saw a girl standing at the bottom of the stairs. She called out to her, thinking it was my younger cousin, asking her to come upstairs. But the child didn't move, she just stood there. My grandma called out to her again. She was standing in the dark at the bottom of the steps, but there was no response. My grandma walked with the cane, or sometimes she had a walker, so she couldn't go down the stairs herself. Instead, she started calling for help. She turned her head to the left to where the kitchen was at, and she was asking someone to come down to go check on her. Now, we had about 4 or 5 concerned adults who got up right away, and my grandma pointed to the bottom of the steps and said she was standing right there. And when everyone looked, there was no one at the bottom. So, concerned for her safety, the adults quickly gathered to search for her. Now, this older house had a very unique layout, especially the basement, where the lights were turned on by pulling on a string, but it was located at the bottom of the stairs, so you had to walk all the way down there to turn on the lights. As they entered the basement, they were met with red brick walls that carried like an old world charm, and it was accentuated by a dark corners where the light couldn't quite reach. There were also small crawl spaces that piqued curiosity but seemed to serve no clear purpose. Now, despite their thorough investigation, they didn't find anything in the basement. Once they returned upstairs, the adults all called the children inside and counted them to ensure that everyone was accounted for. Thankfully, none of us had ventured down into the basement. We were all outside enjoying our time together. My grandma's worry was understandable, but as we all got together, it was just clear to us that this was just another chapter of the ongoing saga of the ghost child. Now, a couple weeks go by, and I was staying the night at my aunt's house. My older cousin was babysitting us because the adults were gone. He was in his room, so we decided to all play hide and go seek. There were about four of us, we were all close in age, and one of us started counting, so we all went to hide. I ran towards the living room, and in the living room we had two couches arranged in a L shape. They were not connected, and in between them was an octagon shaped end table with the glass on top of it, so you could see right through it, but it was covered by a piece of lace fabric, so I decided to hide underneath it. Now, this end table is old and wobbly, and even getting in it, there was a lot of creaking noise, but I just thought it was a good idea. Plus, in that room, the only source of light was from a lampshade that was in the corner of that room. So, as I went under there, I was waiting, and a shadow casted over me. When I turned around, someone was staring down at me. I could see both of the hands resting on the lace fabric and a face kind of like nodding from left to right as if they were trying to make out my face. I started smiling because I couldn't believe that I had already been found, but as I began to peek from underneath the table, there was no one there. I froze and I looked back under the table, and no one was standing at the top or sitting at the top looking down. So I came back out and I felt the hair on my neck stand up. And just then I heard three, two, one, ready or not, here I come. In that moment, I realized that I had seen a ghost. I had seen the ghost of the child. When I went underneath the table, it made a creaking noise, but when the child sat on top of it, there was no noise, just a shadow casting over me. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became. I let out a big scream and I ran out of that room. Everyone came searching for me and they were asking what happened. I told them what I had seen, and of course, our adrenaline was running high. I went back over to the table to try and recreate what I had seen, but I couldn't even stand on the table without it wobbling as if it were going to crash down because it was so old. It made a noise, but when that child got on top of it, there was nothing, just a shadow. So I don't even know what to think of this, whether it was, I don't know if it's like a trapped spirit or a spirit of something pretending to be a child. Either way, it's still very chilling. The second encounter I had was with a, I want to say a mimic. People call it a mimic, like something that mimics a child or like a baby cry to try to lure you in. So my mom used to tell me that she would always hear a baby crying in the closet. At first, I thought she was trying to scare me into behaving, but I ended up hearing it for myself on two separate occasions. We lived in a trailer and not the nice modern ones. We lived like in the old rundown ones, and we didn't have central air, so we had to install an AC unit in one of the bedroom windows, and we would leave that bedroom open so that the entire like trailer would get cold. For the most part, we would rely on just opening the windows to let air flow through. So one day, while my mom was in the kitchen cooking, I was in the living room watching cartoons, and my baby brother, who was about a month old, was swaddled in his crib. You could hear kids in the neighbor's backyard, and there was There was a window. So the way our trailer was set up is at the very back of the trailer was the master bedroom, and that is where my little brother was sleeping. And then you come out to the long hallway, and at the very end, the other end, was the kitchen and the living room. So you could really hear everything around us. Again, we kept the windows open. There was a tree right next to the window, so you could hear the birds chirping. And as I was sitting there, I heard a loud cry, and it was not the "I'm hungry" cry or "I just woke up" cry. It was a "I'm in pain" type of cry. So I jumped up from my seat. I rushed towards the bedroom at the end of the hallway, and as I stepped into the bedroom, everything went silent. I was shocked. The kids that were playing outside were no longer making noise. The birds in the tree had stopped chirping, and the TV that had been playing my cartoons had gone silent. And it was all in a matter of like 4 seconds. 4 seconds that felt like an eternity. As I stepped into the bedroom, I looked to the right where the crib was at, and my little brother was sound asleep. He was still swaddled in the crib, and he hadn't moved an inch from where we had laid him down when he first fell asleep. And my heart dropped. I felt like the blood flushing down my face, and I ran. I ran, and I was just, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it was just one of those unreal moments. And as soon as I started running, all of a sudden, all the noise came back. The TV started to play my cartoons, the kids started to play again, the birds started to chirp. It was just very eerie. Now, um, the third encounter that I had was about a decade later, and again, it was the same thing. It was a mimic, I guess. I had my oldest son, and it was just him and I. We were home alone. He had just fallen asleep, and I needed to shower. So I swaddled him. I laid him in the middle of my bed, and he was such a tiny baby. He was probably, I want to say, about a month old. Like, he was a fresh baby. So I knew he wasn't going to roll over or crawl. And I laid him in the middle of my bed. The bathroom was about 2 feet away from my bedroom, so I just left the bedroom door open and the bathroom door open. That way I could hear him if he started fussing. So I go into the bathroom, I start showering, and as I'm scrubbing my head with soap, I hear a loud thud, like something had fallen, followed by my baby screaming, and I panicked. I quickly tried to rinse the soap from my eyes because I could hear him crying. He was in distress. I rushed out of the bathroom with no towel, and I entered the bedroom. And as I walked in, silence. No crying. My baby was sound asleep. He hadn't moved an inch from where I had left him. I looked around to see what had caused the thud, and I found nothing. And then an overwhelming sense of fear washed over me, as if someone were standing right behind me, nearly breathing on my neck. I froze for a moment. I was scared, but then anger rushed through me. I turned around quickly just to find that there was nothing there. I got dressed so quick. I grabbed my baby and I ran out of the house, soap still in my hair. I walked to my mom's place, which was 2 trailers down, diagonal from me, and I asked her to watch the baby while I took a shower. Now, my last encounter is different from the others that I've shared, and I saved this for last because it's personal. It involves my grandmother who had passed away when I was about 8 or 9. So we lived with her in her home, and it was a really charming home. She had a closed-in deck at the front of the house, and a long driveway on the side. I vividly remember one day when she had a doctor's appointment in Iowa City. It was cold. I ran outside, and my grandpa is standing by the door, like the driver's side door, and she's about to get in through the passenger. My cousin, who they had adopted, was in the back seat, and I was calling to my grandma, and I said, "Grandma, can I please go with you?" And she said, "No, honey, I will be right back. You just stay here. I remember feeling so sad because I really wanted to go with her. I was attached to my grandmother, I was always with her. And I stood there holding back tears as they got into the car and drove away. I waved goodbye, and as I was about to shut the door, something chilling happened. The moment that I shut the door, I heard a loud banging, followed by my grandma's scream piercing through the air. I was paralyzed with fear. I couldn't even move, so I called out to my mom. My voice was trembling, and I told her what I had just heard. I said, "Mom, it sounds like she's dying." And so she rushes to the door and flings it open. But there was nothing outside. The car was gone. It wasn't even down the street anymore. The next day, after that moment, we received the tragic news. My grandparents had been in a terrible accident. They had been driving down an icy road when they lost control and were struck by two semis. The only survivor was my cousin, who was just a year older than me. Now, to this day, I can't explain what I experienced at that moment. I felt like a strange echo across time, a connection to something far beyond my understanding. Those are just a few encounters that I've had, and I promise to return with updates about my basement. For now, thanks for watching.
Sitting in the basement apartment